In this lesson, we'll learn a technique for fixing deformations that require corrective targets. So in the scene, I've managed to adjust the weights. Okay, so everything is looking really nice. However, if we were to go ahead and grab the head control and start to bring that down, you'll see that eventually we'll run into an area where we'll lose volume, and it just doesn't look too well. Yes, we could always paint weights back, but again, the problem is the volume would be lost. So here's where we can use a corrective target to fix this. And then we can tie the corrective target's triggering into our next rotation so we don't have to worry about an extra parameter. So let's go ahead and get started. With our mesh selected, we're going to go ahead and clone it. Let's Control V. We'll make it a copy. And then let's go ahead and remove our skin modifier. Now at this point, we can go ahead and translate this up and rename it. So we're going to name this MRPH underscore neck CRT01. So here's our morph target for our neck correction. And let's also create a new layer for all of our target objects. So I'm going to go ahead and name this layer targets. Okay, great. So at this point, we can go back to our mesh and go ahead and create a morph modifier. There it is. Now, very important, in order for this to be evaluated correctly, we'll need to make sure that the morpher lies between our editable mesh node and the skin modifier, so that this gets evaluated first and then the skin. All right, at this point, let's go ahead and create a default state that captures our mesh's skin pose. So I'll just go ahead and scroll down, and then we will find underneath our channel properties, capture current state. We can rename it if we like, but I'm just going to go ahead and leave this at the default name. That's descriptive enough. All right, so now in the next channel, we'll need to add our corrective target. Now, before we do that, it's a good idea to go ahead and turn on automatically reload target so we don't have to keep refreshing this. All right, so I'll now go ahead and right click on the next empty channel and choose pick from scene. And now we'll grab our target. Okay, great. So just to show you how this is going to work, when we set this to 100%, we can now grab a few points. We should already know how the morph targets work already, but again, we can start to now manipulate points on our horse. So we'll need to now fix the neck, and then we'll get in and use an expose node followed by the reaction manager to tie this corrective target into our next rotation. All right, so let's go ahead and now add some animation. We'll turn on auto key and head over to frame 20. And then at that point, we can go ahead and drop the neck. Okay, great. So we can now go ahead and turn off auto key. And let's go ahead and create the expose node that we'll use to capture our next rotation. So let's go ahead and head over to our create panel, and we'll create an expose TM. All right, you'll find that right underneath the crowd tool and right above the point helper. So I'll just go ahead and add this to the scene. All right. So the next step then is to align this to the neck bone we'd like to capture the rotation from. So we could always align this to neck A. I'll go ahead and Alt A align. We'll lock this down in position and orientation. Okay. And it looks like it actually went to the scapula, so I'll go ahead and run that again. Beautiful. Now with the expose node, with us aligning it the way we did, it really isn't a big deal. It's just a way of keeping it connected to our rig. All right, so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and rename this to expose neck A01. Basically, the bone object we need to grab the rotation from. All right, next, let's go ahead and link it to the same object, again, just so it stays connected to our rig. Now, at this point, if we were to head over to our Modify panel, and go ahead and scroll down, you'll see some data we need to input in here in order for us to get the rotation we need. So at the top, here's where we grab the object we'd like to grab the rotation data from. Let's go ahead and choose Expose Node at the very top and click on Bone A. If the horse is getting in the way, feel free to go ahead and hide your mesh layer temporarily. So I'll go ahead and grab Neck Bone A. It's been assigned. And what's great is that Max will already load in the parent object, which is the neck anchor. And this is important because if we were to scroll down now, what you'll find is that we now have the rotation data for the neck. And if we were to go ahead and pin this down and start to scrub, you'll see that our values are changing in our y-axis. So this is great. We can now go ahead and use this to drive our corrective shape. All right, beautiful. All right, so the next step is to go in and start to work on our corrective shape, and then we can finish by working with our reaction manager to tie this all together. So let's go ahead and get right to that. I'm going to bring back the mesh, and we'll go to an area that's causing trouble. Okay, so at this point, it's just a matter of finding the points on the horse on our corrective target and fixing those points. I'll go ahead and unpin the expose node, and now we can go in and grab the vertices of our horse here. So we'll just grab a few at the top of the neck. And let's go ahead and test this out. So as we start to pull our points, you can see that we're starting to correct the volume of the neck. So now we can go to the points next to that one. I won't fully finish the target in this lesson because it's going to require just a little bit of tweaking. But you get the idea. We just want to move our points until we get that just right. So I'll go ahead and pause the video and take care of that. And when I come back, we'll be ready to work with the reaction manager. And here we are. So if I were to scrub through the animation again and go ahead and grab the horse, what you'll see is that if we were to go to the morpher modifier and start to increase that, we now have volume back. If I were to go back to layers, I'll go ahead and show you the target. So you can see the mesh doesn't look the best way on the morph target. However, we had to do what we needed to do in order to get the volume back here. Okay, great. So now it's time to finish up. You can see when we scrub back, again, this is the result we see. But what we'll be able to do is tweak the reaction manager in order to have this shape trigger properly. So let's go ahead and get right to that. So with the reaction manager, we need to create a master object and a slave object. The master is the parameter that drives everything, and then the slave is the one that, of course, will be driven by the master's parameter. All right, so let's go ahead and set all of this up. We could always go ahead and zero out our target channel. Underneath animation, we'll grab the reaction manager, and now we need to pick our master object. By the way, if you'd like to learn more about the reaction manager, feel free to take a look at our facial rigging course. But I'll go ahead and grab the expose node, and we need to find the y-axis, specifically our local y-axis. So I'll go ahead and head over to Object, Expose, Transform Helper, and we'll grab the local y of our neck bone. All right, now what will be driven, of course, is our target. So let's go ahead and choose Add Slave. We'll grab our mesh. That's going to be Modified Object, Morpher, and we'll grab our target. Okay, beautiful. So now it's time to create a state where the target should trigger. So with the master selected, we can head over to the area that's causing problems on frame 20. We'll choose create mode, and now we're able to adjust our target. We're not able to do that unless we're under create mode. So with our mesh selected, let's go ahead and move back over to our target and set the weight to 100. Now we can choose create state. There's our value. There's our reaction manager's curve that gives us an idea of our transition. And then we can go ahead and turn off create mode. And let's go ahead and take a look at this. So as we start to scrub through, you'll see that, all right, it's almost there. Now we have the shape kind of popping in a little bit too early. So what I like to do is start to add corrective keys in the reaction manager. So it works the same way. We'd go to the frame that's causing issues. And now we can select our master at the top, choose create mode, and start to adjust our morph value until we get what we need. And then at that point, we create another state. And now we can go ahead and exit create mode to test this out. Okay, so it's almost there. You can see that there are a few other issues here. So again, it's just a matter of grabbing the master. Let's go ahead and go back to create mode. Let's go ahead and adjust our value a little bit more to get what we need. Create the state, and now exit create mode. Now I would like to point out that it probably will take a few tweaks to get that just right. You could see a little bit of skipping there, and let me go ahead and show you why. If we were to zoom into our key, I'll just go ahead and use the zoom tool. Let's go ahead and take a look at our value. So here's the value at 100% at the end of the curve. So that skip means that we're having a drastic change from the key that we've added prior to our max value. And you can see that clearly if we were to zoom in a little bit more. What you'll see is that this key's value, I'll go back to the select tool, is about 23. But when we move from that, we immediately come into a high point. So there are ways to adjust this. It's just a matter of adding more keys, and you could also right-click on your key and set that to Bezier Smooth. So now, if you were to kind of zoom out here, you'll see we have this tangent handle we can work with to smooth deformations. So we can start to alter this curve until we get what we need. So notice it's getting a little bit better. And again, you may need to go in and add just a few more keys to get this to work just right. But what we want is a smooth transition throughout this curve, throughout our values in order to have this happen. So I'll go ahead and continue to tweak this, pause the video, and when I come back, we'll see the result in the reaction manager. And here is the final result. So you'll see that volume is now being kept, and you can also get an idea of my curve editor. You can see I didn't have to add too many keys, and that's a good idea. The few keys, the better. That means that we'll just have a smoother result in the end. So we've learned a technique for not only correcting problems in deformations, but also how to automate the triggering of those corrective targets so that we don't have an extra parameter that will need to receive animation in order to correct those issues. The animator can just get right in and start to pose the character without any concerns of if whether the character is capable of getting the clear silhouettes they need. All right, so that is it. At this point, it'd just be a matter of grabbing the helper, which is our expose node, and adding that to, let's say, objects to hide. We can now go in and hide our bone objects. We can freeze our mesh. As far as the target object, again, we'll want to hide that. Notice how clean our scene looks now. And then we can go to our head control, Alt right click, and remove the animation. So in the end, we're left with a very clean rig. And there is a lot of power in this. We went through so much content. And if you need to, feel free to refresh up on a few topics that we've covered in order to solidify those concepts and use them in even greater ways. Now, to finish up, what I might do is add a turbo smooth. You have that option. Just simply select your mesh. We'll hit the T key a few times. Here's the turbo smooth, and that will just add more polish. It's always nice to add a turbo smooth to a model just to kind of get that extra finesse. All right, beautiful. So thanks for watching. Sure learned a lot, and I'll see you in the next training course.